Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the special edition of In the Weeds with Jimmy Young on location at New England Cannabis Convention. We call it NECANN here in Albany, New York. And this booth happens to be across the way, if you will, from our pal Rick Linney from Accounting Buds, who, if you do watch our network, you've probably seen him on thousands of times. But when you're across from a network, you get noticed. And I met this gentleman, David Sandelman, at another trade show in New Jersey about 2 months ago, 3 months ago.
See, time flies. That was a while ago. That was probably at least 7-8 months ago.
I have no idea what day it is, so welcome to my world.
Yes.
And by the way, a fellow entrepreneur. Tell me about what you guys do and why you are shaking up this industry, David.
We've taken a whole new approach to drying and curing. Up until now, when people were doing drying and curing, legacy, they would hang the plant in a dry space, whether it was outside or in a room with an air conditioner or a dehumidifier, and they had to get it just right. If they pulled the flower out too soon, it would be wet. It would wind up in a bag or a container, and they had to burp it and let the moisture out, or they wound out with mold.
Hang on a second. You could burp weed?
Oh, yes.
No, you can't. What?
It came, yeah, when a Tupperware, remember you used to burp the Tupperware? That's where it came from, burping the container, letting the air out.
Okay.
But I ask people, you burp it in Florida in the summer or you burp it in upstate New York in the winter, it's going to be a very different burp. So,
And I learned something. That's great.
it all depends, like where you do this, when you do it, you are a victim of the environment. So we turned the whole thing upside down. We created the perfect environment. You put the flower in, and then it dries to the perfect moisture content, and now it's curing. You don't have to move it out of the space. You don't have to guess when it's ready or not, and it just comes out amazing, sticky bud. And now because you have the right conditions, you leave it in there, and now you really are able to cure the flower. And now you can start thinking about a cannabis flower like a fine bottle of wine or bourbon and how it gets better with time and age.
Look at that smile. You know what? He knows what he's talking about. He has been in space for a while. How did you get into the cannabis space? Because I'm going to guess that the background, tell me a little bit about the background and how we got to this point in time.
It started with cheese.
Of course it did.
So they've been making cheese for hundreds of years, but they would make a particular cheese in a particular region at a particular time of year. So if you think about it, you would make cheddar, and you'd make Romano and Emilia Romano. And 200 years ago, you wouldn't dream of making cheddar in Emilia Romano or vice versa. Now people want to make any kind of cheese, any place in the world, any time of the year. So they struggled with where they were aging the cheese. So we developed the technology for cheesemakers so that they can make any cheese anywhere and replicate the conditions of an aging room. It worked. We have hundreds of cheese facilities throughout North America. That then led to charcuterie, dry aging meats. And then we said, will this work for cannabis? So we built a small unit, which is now our home unit.
When did you do this?
The small unit, probably about 3 years ago, was the first prototype, and we gave it to a grower, and he said, this is the most amazing flower I've ever produced. And then we thought we were onto something, and we made a couple more, and now there are thousands of them out there, and people love it. We then scaled it back up to large commercial size, like a cheese aging room, but now these are rooms for drying flour, where people are doing 1,000, 1,500 pounds at a time into rooms. We have places with multiple rooms, big grow operations, and they're producing some of the finest flour the industry has seen.
That's a great story. And by the way, one of the most amazing things about this industry is running into people like you that have had a background in another part of the world, another application, if you will, and then have adapted it to this new opportunity in cannabis. I'm amazed at some of these stories. It's really fun. Do you enjoy being in the cannabis space now?
Oh, it's great. 5 years ago, if I told me I was standing at a weed show, I'd go, you're crazy. And here we are, at a cannabis weed show.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.